All right, so today I want to talk about homelessness again because a lot of people watched my video from yesterday about people who can't afford homes and are living in their cars. But from a person who has to see homelessness from the view of my own kitchen window every day, there isn't a day that I haven't looked out there and not seen someone walking through the parking lot at a really late hour or someone digging in the dumpster hoping to find something to eat. In fact, today when I was coming into my apartment complex, there was a girl, probably very young, I would say in her early to mid 20s, and I passed her in my car, and the look on her face was, I'm fresh, homeless. She's still clean, but you could tell that look, that bag, those clothes, she didn't have anywhere to go. And I remember feeling that the first time that I became homeless, I was walking down McClintock and I was going under the bridge where the train comes over on Broadway. And I told myself that this wasn't really happening, that this couldn't happen to someone like me, that it wasn't happening. And I tried to convince myself in the moment that nothing was wrong, that I was just taking a walk. And then the cruelty of the situation fell upon me. So when you can feel the weight of the world crush you as you don't understand, most human beings don't understand what it feels like to not have any place to be or go or sit. Because when you're outside, and you guys mentioned this many times in the comments, it's illegal to sleep outside in Arizona. You are not allowed to be homeless. And a lot of that stems from people, policymakers, and rich people, and people that don't think that it can happen to them, believing that it's a choice. I don't know where they came up with this idea that it was a choice, but there were people that were living on the west side of the Tempe Town Lake for years. When they cleaned them out of the bottom of the riverbed, there were people on TV saying that they'd lived there for more than 10 years. Because what are you supposed to do? You can't just stop being homeless and apply to a good paying job. It doesn't work that way. The way out of homeless is of being homeless is very complicated, and many people can't get there. And the reason for that, it's not that they don't want to become normal people, it's that there are so many barriers to becoming normal again. This is the last 3 years have been the first time in my entire life in which I have had enough money in order to be able to not constantly think about becoming homeless, because it's been a fear in my head throughout my entire life from the first time that I became homeless till every time I think about losing my job, which I still don't understand how I still have a job. I rarely talk to anyone anymore at work, and I kind of just show up and sit at my desk, and then I go home, and no one says anything to me. I guess when when my boss told me that the senior manager, all he had to do was keep his mouth shut and sit at his desk, and they would never fire him because they didn't want to have to deal with that. I guess that's the boat that I'm in currently, but it's still better than not having a job and knowing that inevitably you're going to be on the street. But getting back to getting out of being homeless, there are so many barriers in place to you returning to a normal life. And a lot of it has to do with finding some people, not just one person, but people who are going to help you transition towards a normal job and finding housing. Because once you have an eviction on your record, it is nearly impossible to get another apartment complex to take the risk of renting to you. And I remember reading a story and watching something on Vice News that in Florida in Disneyland, there's a lot of the employees have to live in their cars or they have to live in motels because they don't make enough money to rent and they've got that eviction on their record. One of the first questions you get asked when you rent an apartment is, do you have an eviction? If the answer is yes to that question, you shouldn't even waste your money on putting in an application to that apartment because you're going to have to find alternative ways of housing yourself. And that may mean that you stay homeless or you're living in a motel room for an extended period of time. I've never had to live in my car because I've never owned a car. For me, the second that I didn't have a paycheck meant that I was going to be spending my nights looking for places to hide. And that's what one of the hardest parts of being a homeless person is constantly looking for somewhere to be out of the way. Because if you're out in public, if you're out in the open and the police see you, they're going to ask you what you're doing because everywhere you go as a homeless person, you're trespassing. In fact, one of the few times that I made a recording was about the homeless here in Tempe. The police were harassing a guy that was sleeping under a sign that said no trespassing. He has no choice. All the homeless people that hang out at that Circle K right down the street from my house, they're there because it's one of the few businesses that's open 24 hours a day. And some people are afraid to be in places where there aren't other people. And I imagine that's what drives them to those types of areas. I ended up sleeping around the university because that's where I felt most comfortable. I slept on the roof of many buildings throughout my homeless career. So, yes, let's transition into my 4 talking points from here. Homeless isn't just a personal failure. It's a systemic reality designed to keep us afraid and compliant. Even though I don't like my job, and one of the first comments that I got this morning was from a girl, a Gen Z girl, who wrote me in the comments of my video, and there's no way she could have watched it that fast, but she saw it pop up and she said, I don't want to work in the tech field. I assure you, no one wants to work in the tech field. Today, during our meeting, our weekly meeting, which I don't know why I have to go to this meeting, but the first person, we take turns talking about what projects we're working on and what we're doing and, problems that we might be having. It's a complete waste of time, but they have it every week anyway. The first person that got on to speak told the group, sorry guys, I quit. And you could just hear my boss say, oh, beep. And I was like, yeah, this is what happens when you don't pay your workers market value. And I'd like to use that term market value in reference to living wages, right? But this corporation doesn't believe in living wages. And in fact, today during the same meeting, I found out that they're not doing any hiring in the new year. And so that's what my boss told us in the meeting. It's like, we're not doing any more hiring for this year. And then the senior manager chimes in and says, well, we hired 30 people in the last 10 days. And then you could hear they went back and forth with I thought the executive said no more hiring. And of course, if you fire 300 people in 2 months, you're going to need people. And regardless of what the executive team says, you've got to hire people or else there's no one to do the jobs. But I thought that was hilarious that our first meeting of the new year and already someone quit. And my coworker that I was in the office with me today, he messaged me on the messaging app through work, and he's like, "Yep, I knew it. Another one bites the dust." And I was like, this is what happens. So, anyhow, a system that's designed to keep us afraid and compliant. How else would you get people to go to jobs? And this is where I was going with this. How else do you force people to go to a job that they don't like? You threaten their housing, you threaten their food, you threaten their livelihood. You have to constantly be threatening people and then showing the threat. It's like when plantation slaves would get out of line and the master would have to make an example of someone. That's what unexpected layoffs or terminations are in any corporation in current America. They've got to show the workers that could be you, so you better stop complaining and work harder, because it is a dog and pony show out there. What they're showing you with one hand and what they're hiding with the other hand. This is the way that the work system in America works. It's very cruel. And as a person who's been on the receiving end of terminations my entire life, Suddenly, you're barely making it, and then the next day, you're not making it at all. But the reality was, you were never making it. Every time that I've been homeless, it's most of the time it's because my job doesn't pay me enough, or because I lost my job and rent's coming up in 10 days, right? You got to figure out how you're going to pay that rent. Just because you don't have a job doesn't mean you don't have to pay your bills. In fact, they go hand in hand with one another. You need work to pay your bills, but you don't like work, but you don't like any other aspect of your life, because if you're not a person who's making it, the overall quality of your life is not good either. So you're not motivated to work hard. You're not motivated to do anything. And because of your aptitude for the types of work that you can do or get, you're stuck in a particular bracket. You are probably going to be stuck in the $15 to $20 bracket for the rest of your life. That's where I've been, at minimum wage jobs my entire life, because work only work pays you to the extent that they can exploit you, right? So the less that they feel that you're worth, the less they're going to pay you. If you're not worth anything, they're not going to pay you anything. And since everyone has no worth in the workplace, according to corporate America and the executives, they don't want to offer any more pay. And today, my coworker showed up and he didn't get a raise. He didn't get a merit raise. And he was very upset at not getting any kind of raise this year. And I can just tell. He's not going to say it out loud, but he's definitely looking for another job. And I imagine that every meeting we have from now on is going to have someone else who's not there. I mean, the amount of terminations I still have to process at my current job is huge. And every time I try to work on them, something else comes up. All right. Talking point number 2. Society loves to blame homeless people on individual choices, but most cases stem from structural issues like unaffordable housing. So, society thinks that people make individual choices that cause them to end up as a homeless person. I assure you that's not true. Sure, there are choices that are made, but they're beyond your control. You can't control your mental health. You can't control a company that's not making money. You can't control a a shrinking economy, because at least the way I see it today, I had to drive to the other Kroger's after I went to the shipping store because the traffic on rural was absolutely disgusting. I was on rural for like half an hour because there was construction that shut down 3 lanes down into one. And then at the end of that traffic, there was a car accident where 2 cars had come off the off ramp and both crashed into the concrete barrier on the off ramp. This is the second or third time I've seen 2 cars crashed into that concrete barrier right next to each other, like they were parking their cars by smashing their cars into the concrete barrier. And all the people that were at the car accident involved in those car accidents were really young women that looked like college students, but wouldn't surprise me since the university's only 2 miles down the street. But everyone seemed okay, and everybody was just kind of looking around. But there's no way I would have walked away from a car accident that hard. Those girls had to be going super fast to smash in the entire front part of their cars. But needless to say, the traffic was abominable. So I had to circle around and go to the other Kroger's. And as I pulled into the parking lot of the Kroger's, I hadn't been to that one in a few months, but there was already a couple of restaurants in that shopping center that had started up and gone out of business. I don't understand people who start businesses when they know that the likelihood of failure is very high. Especially it's a mom and pop shop. One of them was a pizza place, pizza subs and salad place that I never saw it actually open. I never saw anyone that was actually in that spot. So they opened the business and went out of business within 6 months. And that's what happens to small business owners. We're a country that likes to push success on people, their version of success. So if you're not a business owner, you're not a successful person in America. If you're working an hourly job, and I've told you guys this 100 times, hourly work doesn't lead anywhere. And Financial success doesn't come from going to work every day. In fact, I would say that financial failure comes from having to take low level, entry level jobs because no job in America is entry level anymore. All jobs in America, at least when it comes to jobs that aren't fast food, warehouse, or retail, they want you, the job, they pitch the job as entry level, the pay is entry level, but you better pay that cover charge of college if you want to get a job. And that's the cruelty of our society is that we're expected to pay a fee to be a person that's considered hireable, right? You have to have a college degree, whether you're going to use it or not. That um, that tax of having to have higher education in order to get a halfway decent job, it's still not going to make you comfortable. But without the college degree, without that forced debt upon you, you're not going to go anywhere in life. In fact, you're just going to go nowhere in life if that's all you can do is get that crappy degree in whatever liberal arts degree you choose. I mean, I have four of them and I'm still broke, but it's a requirement to get into my current job. No degree, they're not even going to consider you. And you know why that is? It's because all the other people realize if I don't go to college, chances are I'm going to get stuck in a crummy job. But most of us get stuck in a crummy job that we don't like anyway. Like my current job, I wouldn't go back to my current job ever again if I didn't have to. If I didn't need money for food and rent, there's no way in hell I would subject myself to this kind of work for the rest of my life. It's just not worth it. What it does to you emotionally and spiritually and your creativity is not repairable, in my opinion. Corporate America is destroying people. And while they're destroying them emotionally, they're destroying you financially with these wages. All right, talking point number 3. Spikes on sidewalks, divided benches, and laws banning sleeping in public spaces aren't solving homelessness. This is what I've been saying on my channel for a long time. They don't want to solve homelessness. Solving homelessness costs a lot of money for people who have no value. That's the way our society dictates that it's going to spend its money. It would much rather spend its money on government, on military spending, financing wars that don't matter to the average person. Our lives matter here in America. We don't care what's going on in the Middle East. We don't care what's going on in the Ukraine. We don't care about anything else. We care about two things: eating and having some place to sleep. And when you have, well, I was writing this, I saw the largest number I've ever seen. ChatGPT came up with the number of 625,000 homeless people in America in the year 2023. That statistic has got to add at least another 250,000 more homeless people. And the problem with counting the homeless people is that you don't count all of them because they're not all outside raising their hand waiting to be counted. There's so many people out there who are in hiding, like the people in Las Vegas that sleep in the tunnels, in the drainage tunnels beneath the city. You have people that don't want to be seen, and at the same time aren't being seen, so they're not being counted. Or people that just choose not to work, right? If you're a Gen Zero and you go to a shopping mall and you see that all the jobs inside of the mall pay minimum wage, and you know where minimum wage leads to. You're broke, but you're also stressed out about being broke, so why even bother to put yourself into that situation? So there is no push to solve homelessness. The push is just to make it invisible and pretend it doesn't exist, because that's the way that you sleep at night. But to me, seeing those people every day on my drive to work, it is a great motivator to keep going to work and just keep putting your head down and pretending that everything's fine. Because you don't want to end up out there. It was really cold today, and it is very cruel to have people out there on the street in this kind of weather. My final talking point: we have enough empty houses to solve the homeless problem. But because the system profits from scarcity, fear, and exploitation, all of those millions of homes that are available right now with no one living in them because housing has become a commodity to be traded, right? There's people that make a lot of money in real estate by holding on to real estate because it makes money, right? Real estate only seems to go up, and the people that hold on to all of that real estate, even if there's no one living there, they don't care. It's still making them money in the long term. Every person on YouTube will tell you that the way to establish personal wealth is to own real estate. Well, the vast majority of people can't do that. Most of us can't go out and buy a car with cash money. We don't have the money to put down for a house loan. We have job insecurity, which makes us fear that if we lose our job, we're going to lose our house, and therefore you're going to have the bank repossess your home. So there's all of these barriers out there, but the housing is there. It's built. And unfortunately, because of the nature of our world, I would say this about food. No one in the world should go hungry because there's plenty of food. There are plenty of resources for everyone. It's just a matter of the way that a cruel system, systemic cruelty is baked right into our society, forcing millions of people, probably in the near future, into homelessness, because that's what our world is. You know, someone asked me this morning in the comments, it's like, why would the corporations want everyone to be homeless? Well, if you're homeless, you no longer need more money, right? If you're homeless, you're more likely to take a lower wage because now you're not paying for housing. If everyone is paying $2,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment, and suddenly you're homeless and you don't need that $2,000 to pay rent, it's going to make people more desperate. And corporations love desperate people because they're willing to work much harder for practically nothing. That's why they want more immigration. That's why they want those visas for those workers, those tech workers that are going to come here and work a lot harder for a lot less, undermining what regular Americans need in order to live comfortable lives. But that's a system that's designed to function in a way in which it only benefits a certain class of people.